the progress in gender equality, and what kind of challenges do you and how important is it to have, as you just mentioned, equality, and as Norway is inclusive, you have women who are professionals, yourself included, and how is it important to have women as empowered and play an equal role in society?
I think it's fundamental. I'm absolutely convinced that the high quality of my own society is very much due to the important role that women has played in the last 110 years. And of course before that, but politically we've been on the scene for, well, a hard struggle, but it has really led to the participation of women in society at all levels, economically, politically, socially, which has changed the focus of politics, because when women enter politics, the priorities change. That's a fact, because we are the ones who have always been responsible for the well-being of families. So whereas the men have always helped in the provision of the money, the caretaking and the sort of the glue in any family has very often been the woman. The woman is also, and you see that very often, the ones that will give priority to the betterment of the lives of their children when they have to prioritize, when there are scarce resources. Men do that as well, but I think women do it in an even stronger and more sort of concerted way. Educated women are able to guide their children in a way which makes it possible for them to utilize their own resources in a good way. And we represent half of the population, and we represent the same abilities, potential, possibilities as men. So if they're not utilized and exploited and given the opportunity to fully blossom, then any country is losing out.
Do you see women, particularly in Tanzania, facing a challenge to be involved in society? I mean, especially in African countries, you have sometimes suppressive cultures and sometimes religion as well. How do you overcome that and empower women to take their due role in society?
Well, what you can do, I think the Tanzanian women are very active and very dynamic, and they are certainly putting a mark on Tanzanian society and Tanzanian life. They also did that 20 years ago, so I've always found that there are not everybody is yet participating openly, politically, socially, but they do fend for their families. I think that 80% of all the food that comes on the table in African countries is provided by the women. So they are extremely important to the well-being of the country, but I think that there's more room for both economic and political activities and more room for women participation. This, I think, the women I talk to, and they know that this will not come by itself. Nobody's going to give it to you. Women's rights, women's participation has always had to be fought for. Nobody's going to give up privileges to give it to you. That's not going to happen. So you have to be very vocal, you have to be very determined, and you have to just continue to stress the need for women to be participating, to be given positions, to be taken into account, to sit on the boards, to be in the ministries, to be in the bureaucracy, in the teaching profession, in the medical profession. They have to be everywhere.
What kind of support do you give to civil societies and non-governmental organizations that fight or that advocate for women's rights and equality?
I have to admit that we do not work directly with organizations in Tanzania. What we do is that we fund through the umbrella organization for NGOs, Foundation for Civil Society, and they are the ones who select programs and projects to be supported. So most of our support to women organizations go through them. Then occasionally there is an organization which we see definitely should be given priority, and then we ask civil society to look into the possibility of giving them priority. But we do not directly intervene because we have left this to the organization, and according to the evaluations we have done, they do a very good job, so we don't want to come in and sort of manage how they're doing things. But they know that one of our criteria is exactly that. We want to enhance women's role in any society.
One of the areas that you are involved with here in Tanzania is energy, which is a problem area. What kind of initiatives are you undertaking in the energy sector?
We have very close relationship with the Ministry of Energy and also with TANESCO. We are helping in capacity building. We are discussing construction of some power plants, and transmission lines is an issue we are into. And we are open in open discussions about possibilities of finding new areas where we can cooperate. So, you know, there was a time when building hydropower plants was sort of the normal part of development cooperation between many countries. Then, for several reasons, I think one of them was that the environmental issues made it very difficult in the home countries to go on with hydropower plants, because they very often have some consequences, which it is then difficult for the environmentalists to accept, and they put pressure on governments, and they don't want any noise, and so it's been sort of really played down. It was also decided, I think, at one point that these huge investments, because we are really talking big money, should be left to the private sector. And then the private sector hasn't come in as it was supposed to, and that, I think, has been one of the many reasons behind why there hasn't been an expansion in the utilization of the hydropower resources, for example, in Tanzania. Some big programs have been shelved for those reasons, for lack of funds and for environmental issues. But what we have done, we are very proud of. And we talked a little bit about Kihansi before we started. And Kihansi is a very, very interesting and very efficient power plant. And we took our committee of, the Standing Committee of Parliament for Foreign Affairs came here just about a month ago, and we took them to Kihansi. You know, it's always fascinating to see this big engineering
This is a project that was funded by
this was funded by Norway, but not Norway alone, because it was a very expensive, but we funded a lot of it. Okay. And one of the members, a very senior member of the Norwegian Parliament, who's also been Minister of Health several times, he said when we were there that I have seen many hospitals in Norway which are not as clean and as well kept as this power plant. You know, you drive 1,500 meters into the mountain, and then there all the installations are, the turbines, the enormous computers and all the kinds of very, very sophisticated, but also immaculate in terms of how it's being kept. Right. And that, of course, to me as an ambassador here, is a great pride, and it's very, very good to be able to show it to the parliamentarians, because they are responsible for development budget, and they are always asking us, what are the results? What happened to the money that was allocated 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and so on? So when you can show them a thing like that, you really are able to demonstrate that money has been well spent and is really being utilized well in Tanzania. Doesn't mean that all the money has been equally well spent, but most of it, definitely.
You talked about the environment. I know Norway is involved in supporting government initiatives and communities in combating deforestation and dealing with climate change in general. What kind of initiatives do you have or programs that you're doing in the country in that area?
Tanzania has been singled out as a pilot country for a very, very huge program initiated by the Prime Minister Stoltenberg 4 years ago now. And that means that we're trying to assist in reduction of deforestation and degradation and reduction of reforestation, the REDD, RED program. In Tanzania, it has a number of pillars. One of them is that we have selected 9 different NGOs in the country, in all the different regions, that are running pilot programs in their areas to see how they can help the local population grapple with the challenges that they have in order to make sure that the forest is protected and replanted if necessary, that the water sources are protected, that land use is being done in a proper way, land use planning, and a number of related issues to make sure that there is a strong focus on trying to mitigate the effects of climate change. So that's one very important part. You can see all the contracts on our web page, which we have entered into with the different organizations. Then we give support to the Secretariat, which is under the University of Dar es Salaam. And they are sort of you can say, the core element in the program, developing the strategies and policies and overseeing the activities that we are supporting. And then there's a very interesting program in research and education, where you have scholarships for masters and PhD students. So there will be around 30 master students by the end of the 3-year pilot period, and something between 15 and 18 PhDs will hopefully then be finalized under that program. And that will help in expanding enormously the knowledge base in Tanzania, so that innovation can be given attention, and that the best and most updated knowledge is all the time being available for the government, for their plans, and disseminated to those who need to have that kind of knowledge.
The foreign companies that come into the country and invest in carbon trading. How does that work, and who benefits? Does the local community benefit, or the company itself?
It depends on the agreements, I think, that they make with the community. Because for a company to be able to trade in carbon, for example, you have to do replanting, and it has to be certified that you have really increased the carbon capture. And to do replanting, you need areas, and to get the areas, you have to enter into agreements with government at the national level, regional level, municipal level, village level, whatever, according to the nature of the land that they are going to use. So there, when you enter into that agreement, all these things must be clarified before you can even start. And then you must know the baseline of where did you start from, because otherwise the companies that are responsible for this trading will not be able to verify whether or not what you say you have captured is really